We want to welcome everybody back. We're here today to just give you an insight into the times of when we served and when we came home, and so that when you're watching the interviews that will follow this, you'll get a better perspective on the times that we all served during our country. My name is Justin Latini, served from 1970-74.
My name is Ray Elias. I served in the United States Navy from 1967 to 1971.
My name is Carol Freitas. I served in the Marine Corps from 1986 to 1997.
My name is Richard Mundy. I've been in some sort of military status since 2008 until the present.
There you go. So just start off, Ray, since you came in one of the earliest, earlier than I did during the Vietnam War, a little bit about what was going on before you went in, and then just a brief outlook so that folks get an idea of what was going on at the time.
I think in school, once you got to your junior year, you started thinking about what was going to be happening, and the conflict was on, but we were just advisors there at the time. And then shortly after, it just broke open. Even in '67, it was already going. But my thought process was, I better join something before I get drafted and I'm a grunt in the front lines. So I joined the Navy. I had a couple of uncles who were in the service, and one of them was in the Navy, and we talked a few times, and I went down to see the recruiters, and I joined. I was already in May 15th, before I even got a diploma, and I was gone by September.
And what were some of your friends in the high school at the time talking about? What were you guys?
We were playing sports mostly, you know. We weren't even thinking about going to war, and I was a C student. I wasn't probably knowing that I was going to go to college. A lot of the guys went to college, and you know, were exempt from going in right away, but a lot of them joined afterwards. My thought process was, there was a neighborhood kid that got killed in 67, or 68, and a lot of, no, 66, I think.
66, right?
Yeah, Russell Almeida, and he kind of made the entire neighborhood go in. That was the thought process right there. When we were seniors, we were thinking about that. And he lived right around the corner from me. So he's the main reason why I probably joined, or the main reason why I started thinking about being in the service.
And then when you came home, what was the?
Exact opposite. I mean, I didn't even know anybody when I came home. I didn't want to know anybody when I came home, I don't think. I just got a job in 2 weeks after being home, and stayed working there for 48 years.
So no parade, no flag waving?
No. Matter of fact, when we landed in San Francisco, me and a friend from Maine, we got to the airport, and there were protesting going on in '71. I mean, there was a lot going on. And there was a line of people like, how are we going to get through this? We have to go through this. And he looked at me and goes, hey, we're out. I don't want to get in any trouble. I just want to go home. And I goes, yeah, that's what we're going to do. Look at your chest. There's medals there. We're going through this. And I pushed my way through it. And he followed me. And, you know, there were a lot of, the first time I came home was in '69, first tour.
Oh.
And my father actually said, hey, you know, you got to watch out what you're doing. There's race riots everywhere. You just end up in the wrong place. And you're not going to make it here, never mind in a war zone.
So, and Carol, you want to share a little bit about your start?
Yeah, so I joined a month after I turned 17. I signed up for the Marine Corps, and it was peacetime, 1986. There had been nothing going on since Vietnam ended in '75, and I was a child, so I knew nothing at all about Vietnam. I didn't really learn about it until I was in the service. And I just thought it was a way to get out of my hometown because I didn't want to be there. I had 2 female cousins who joined the military, and that was what I wanted to do. I had no idea what to expect whatsoever. You know, and while I was on active duty, Desert Storm happened. So that was really, even though I didn't deploy to theater of operations, that was my first experience of wartime, even though it was only like 3 months long. So I definitely did not have any experience like you guys did. I had, you know, that different experience of being a female and sometimes being in places where it was a good old boy club, and so I had to deal with that. But that luckily for me, wasn't that prevalent. So I had a great experience, and I'm glad I did it.
And when you came home,
I mean, when I came home, so except for when I did my Westpac deployment, where we deployed as a unit, came home as a unit, and all of the spouses, family were there greeting us as we got off the plane. Not for me, because I wasn't married at the time, but so that was a good experience. Everybody was happy to see their loved one come home. When I got off active duty, honestly, I didn't have anything to do with military organizations. I didn't even know military organizations existed until like 12 years ago. Honestly, I didn't know about VFWs, Vietnam Veterans of America, Marine Corps League, nothing like that. I would tell people that I served in the military, but that was it. It was in my rearview window, basically.
and Rick, when you were,
Yeah, so I think probably the biggest failing of the all-volunteer force in this country is that there's a general disconnect between what the civilian populace sees versus like what the military actually does. So post 9/11, it's I think 0.5% of this country has actually volunteered for some sort of military service. So especially in this area where there's not much military presence, people just don't know. So the perception that I had in my high school and that you see a lot in this area is that you join the military when there's not very many other options in your life. You're not good enough for college, or you got something else going on there. Maybe it's your home life or whatever. But I chose to and applied to the United States Air Force Academy, which was one of the top 10 colleges in this country. And I got advice at the time from people saying, oh, don't do that, because there's better options than joining the military, which honestly, like, your opportunities are endless in the military branches. But what I saw was just a general disconnect. People saying, hey, why do you want to do that? It's not probably the best idea for you.
so you don't feel there was a lot of support at the time when you went in?
I think it was, hey, we support the military. It's a good thing that we have a military. It's an all-volunteer military. But generally, the attitude I got was, people join the military if they don't have other options.
Yeah.
You have other options. You should probably go to like UMass or figure something else out.
But after 9/11, I mean, there was a swell of patriotism, and I mean, there was a 2002, 2003. I mean, it was amazing on how the country turned out to support military first responders. Now you came in 2008.
So I went to, the academy is a weird situation. You're on active duty, but you're not going out there deploying and integrated with the troops because you're a college student in the summers doing military stuff and doing military stuff through the school year. And then when I got off, graduated in 2012, I was on active duty from 2012 to 2024 last year. And now I'm in the Guard in Massachusetts.
So, but there is a connect, I think, now with the veterans and the general population. I know 1% of us have served, which, when you think about 99% have no interest in serving, yet they love the freedoms they have. And we've talked about why we wear our military hat, and someone said, oh, that's so that people know you're in the military, and we say, no, that's so that we can find other veterans, because 1% of us served. We have a small percent that have served this country and have, and then the phrase you've heard before, it's not mine, it's someone else had said something about why they went to war, and it wasn't because they hated the enemy, it's because we love the freedoms we have. And for a lot of the veterans, I have always said that no veteran wants war.
Absolutely not.
And I actually was one of those protesters in 1969 against the war. And what turned me was when they went against the warrior, when I started hearing, the slogans, the baby killers. And I remember coming home, my dad, who was
That's the stuff we got
yeah,
when we came home.
my dad was my dad was a W-2 Navy guy, and I said, that's not why I protest. I love the people who serve. And so I joined for one of the main reasons was to defend brother veterans. But it really didn't matter whether you were in Vietnam or you were in Germany or Tokyo. If you wore a uniform from anywhere in the 60s into the 70s, it wasn't selective on who they protest. Right. If they saw a uniform, that's what they went after. And that's what I was really against, because that wasn't why I went out and protested against the war.
After 9/11, I always say this, the first time I met her was at a selectmen's meeting. And I actually had to stand up because that anti-veteran thing was in the audience somehow.
When we were
and I stood up.
Veteran parking
and
space.
I goes, hey, listen, 9/11, we didn't come home to flag bearing and parades and everything else. But today, after 9/11, these veterans have made it better for us
Yes,
to be a veteran.
to be a veteran.
But I stand up for you guys 200% because you made it better for us.
And-
We didn't want to talk about this at all.
But for us, we thank them and we welcome them
Yes,
home.
yes.
And I think their experience, we didn't want them to experience what we experienced
Yes,
coming home.
yeah.
We didn't want you to have to walk through the gauntlets at the airports or have people, as you're walking toward them in uniform, cross your path like you had some kind of contagious disease. We wanted you to feel welcome. And no matter what the outcome of the war, your service matters. And I think that was the driving force that our generation of veterans wanted to make sure that the next generation understood that. It didn't matter what that outcome of the war was. Your service has to matter.
And in addition to that, like, it doesn't matter where you served. Right? You could have served in a combat zone like Ray. You
Yep.
could have served, in
Newport, Rhode
in
Island.
back in Newport, Rhode Island. During Desert Storm, I was a Marine at an Army hospital in Germany.
Right.
I didn't deploy to a war zone,
Yeah.
but it still mattered.
Correct.
And I had a veteran in my office the other day, and he said, I didn't serve in combat. I don't feel like I'm a veteran. And I said, no,
Right.
you are a veteran. You put on the uniform. You took the oath of enlistment. Your service mattered. Does not matter where or when you served.
Right. And I think that sums up most of the veterans who still have a hard time coming forward. Especially we're not here to get into benefits, but I think every veteran needs to understand that wherever they serve, their service matters, and it's appreciated. And like Ray said, when he came home and I came home, we had a different experience. We didn't get what our parents and grandparents got when they came home with those slave
My
wagon.
mother had 4 brothers and my father were all in World War II.
Yeah.
So it was around us when we were growing up. And there were parades. They went to every parade.
Yeah,
There was always flags.
I remember as a little kid though going,
Yeah.
waving flags, seeing them in
And
uniform.
see, I didn't
Used to come
have
right by
any
my
of that.
house.
Yeah.
I didn't have any of that experience growing up because my
And for us to have nothing,
yeah
nothing.
That's what I mean.
Zero.
Yeah.
like both of my grandfathers passed away long before I was born. I didn't know them. I don't even know if they served. I didn't.
I can-
I didn't grow up with my father. He didn't serve anyway.
Right. So
know,
you wouldn't have had that experience.
Yeah.
But I don't think because our parents served. I think it was just the times we grew up into
Right.
in the late 50s and early 60s. Vietnam really wasn't on the blip. So it was Korea and Vietnam, World War II, and these were the people who were marching in the parades. So parades were a big thing, and as kids you would just go and you would see the veterans and you'd wave the flag for them.
Well, as a freshman, the Cuban crisis was going on, 64. So you were starting to think about it then. I mean, we could be at war with Russia tomorrow. You know what I mean? Who knows? But I used to, the first time I ever talked about something was in the break room when a kid from high school said, hey, what's it like to be in a war zone? And I didn't know how to answer him. I really didn't. I was the store manager at the time, and I said, well, I got to give him a pretty good answer here. I said, all right, Westport's divided by 177, north and south. Now you're an American combat vet. You're a combat Marine. And your job is to go to North Westport, but don't kill any South Westporters while you're there.
Yeah.
And you have the same kind of thing going on when you were. You're not sure who's who.
Yeah, well, it was different when our parents served. The Germans and
Yeah,
Japanese
they
was
knew they
pretty
were
easy.
fighting.
They knew. But our wars were completely different. But our generation, before we finish up, was the first generation to talk about
That's the first time I
PTSD,
ever talked about it, and that's like a long time after.
to talk about post-traumatic stress. Our generation was the first one to start talking about it. Our parents never knew. My dad, I never knew anything about. I just knew what ship he was on and that he served. That's all I knew. And it was our generation
Yeah,
that
same thing with
finally
my
said,
parents.
we have to open up. And the more we open up, your generation will open up and be able to understand that it's okay not to be okay. And I know it's kind of a slogan, it's okay not to be okay, but
Kind-
it's important, We've lost too many who've
Yeah.
taken their lives because they wouldn't talk about it. And even though there's 1% of us, I think we're a pretty strong
I think
group of folks.
we're sitting here all proud to be veteran.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that needs to be the theme. So we thank you very much. Listen in on the interviews. You'll get, hopefully this is giving you a little background to the folks that you're going to be listening to and their stories to put it in perspective.